Recording. Here we go.
No audio on my end.
Shit, of course, man. Why don't they just do that automatically?
I think there's an option when you hit share screen. There's a checkbox that says share audio.
You're not about to make us watch 6 minutes of The View, are you?
Well, why don't they? I don't understand, because Zoom does that too. It's like, why would I not want to share the audio?
Yep.
Like, I don't know why they always ask me to do that. All right, let's try this again. Here we go.
Nope.
Y'all still can't hear it?
No.
What? All right, let's try this again. All right, share screen, share audio. All right, let's just do an entire screen. Maybe that's the problem. All right. Here we go. We're trying again. All right. Can you guys hear this?
The vice presidents.
Yes?
Yep, you
All
got
right,
it.
here we go. So now the show's going to start. Here we go.
Not surprisingly, several polls seem to have found that Vice President Kamala Harris has the lowest approval of any vice president since the 70s. You know how much stuff I believe in polls, but where do you think this is coming from, Joy?
Well, let's see. What is different about her that we haven't seen before? What could it be?
All right. Who's going to guess? What's her theory?
Because she's a woman.
Okay, one for woman. Okay. What do you guys?
Because she's too tall.
It couldn't be because she kind of makes everyone think she's a psychopath. Do y'all think that's one of them? Or maybe she was just incredibly unpopular before she got into office.
I actually spend time in the mirror every night practicing her laugh because I think it's the perfect laugh.
All right, Joy Behar, what's your big theory here?
Oh, that's right. She's a woman and she's black. I almost forgot.
Okay.
50% credit.
Well, the truth here. I mean, it seems like there's this bombardment of criticism on her and Biden coming from the right, as if they've been in office for 4 years. They've only been there for what, 6 months?
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I am actually like, that seems to be a privilege that only goes to like the left side of the debate here. They can always they've been playing that card over and over and over and over, and it keeps working. And they're the only ones that can do that. So why not play it over and over again? I don't know. That's quite a theory that, you know, after 8 years of a black president, I guess we weren't racist then, but we just started becoming racist now for Kamala, just in time, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Probably because he was half white, though. I mean, so.
Yeah.
Well, and everyone knows Obama was the least liked president ever. Like, totally unpopular. So, you know, it can't because of that.
It's obviously not because her and Biden are psychopathic tyrants, right? Like that couldn't possibly be it.
My favorite part about that video is, as in quotes, underwater, as if this is somehow not a factual thing, right? Like they're reporting on the fact that she has bad approval ratings and like quote unquote underwater. Like that's just what it means. It's not a quote unquote. It's definitionally what you're talking about.
Well, and I love that Whoopi goes like, well, I don't believe in polls, but we're going to talk about this anyway, as if it's real. Like, thanks for just admitting y'all's show is just a bunch of hot air.
Yeah.
I love The View. I love it. Like, I really love it. It's like every one of them is a caricature, but they're the only ones that don't know it.
The View is the perfect manifestation of the phrase white middle-class women need to be stopped. Like that is the perfect manifestation of that phrase. It is tailored to that demographic, and that statement in and of itself of the disapproval of Kamala just shows how they transition to like more the touchy-feely, like emotional part of it, as opposed to like actually talking about what she's done or what she stands for, you know?
Yeah. If there were any good female comedians, I would tell them they need to actually make a View like spinoff or something where that's what like they're pretending to be the cast of The View, and they can do kind of like a Stephen Colbert style show just with The View. Wouldn't that be funny?
I'd tune in. I would definitely tune in.
See how many people fall for it and they think it's real and they think it's a good show, a legit show. That's what Colbert's whole thing was tricking like conservatives into thinking he was legit, and you know them realizing later he was actually just making fun of all of them the whole time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's depressing to me is The View has like a 3 million viewer audience, but what's inspires confidence is a majority of that's over the age of 55. So it's not middle-aged women; it's old women. So basically, what you see is what's watching that.
Yeah, I always find it interesting. So, like, not to devolve too politically too quickly, but I always find it interesting that we think of our government as representative, and politicians continue to ask people that are not representative of certain demographics to vote for them to protect these other demographics, right? Like, how pretentious is that to ask someone who actually has, like, a middle-class lifestyle, is white, doesn't have to deal with all of this other stuff, to vote for a politician to protect people that they have absolutely no clue about, right? Like, they're not familiar with walking that walk of life, but you're supposed to vote for this other person who's a proxy to then white knight for this other group that you're completely detached from. It's like, it's nonsensical.
Yeah, they've watched Sex and the City, and there's probably a black character on that show, and they think, okay, well, I know black people now, right? Yeah.
I learned everything I needed to know about black culture from watching Martin and In Living Color. That was basically it. Yeah.
I learned everything from what was it, Black Dynamite? Yeah, that's where I learned it all from.
That's my favorite movie. God damn, that's a good movie. Yeah, I love Black Dynamite. All right, let's go ahead and do the formal introductions here. So David and Matt, welcome to the Gulag. Glad to have you guys. We just went on y'all's show recently, and we talked about 3D printing and CAD and things like that, and that was pretty fun. So now it's our turn. So thanks for coming on, guys. So I guess Matt, I guess I'll start with you. So you actually were in the middle of a pretty big transition right around the time that I linked up with you. Do you want to tell the viewers about that?
Yeah, definitely.
Give us kind of your story.
So I don't want to be too long-winded and take most of the oxygen out of the room, but like a lot of people, the events of the last 18, 24 months have really kind of woken a lot of people up. I've voted libertarian for probably 3 election cycles now. But I still didn't know what that meant. Like, I didn't know what libertarianism was. I didn't know what really, what was behind it, right? So the first iteration of the show was called Why Libertarian? And it was really, like, it was a play on 2 things. It was, one, my just personal, like, it was actually kind of selfish. Like, it was my personal desire to just get people on a show like this and pick their brain, like, ask them about, like, where they stood on things and try and understand kind of the more ideological or philosophical basis behind why they saw the world the way that they did. And try and then transport that into my own life and be like, all right, well, where do I now feel that, like, I fit in as far as that goes? Because it's a really wide spectrum. And also the other dynamic was, at the time, was the walkaway movement. So if you remember, all the Democrats during the presidential election, there was actually a pretty big YouTube channel that got taken down in a Facebook group that was associated with just, people that were walking away from the Democratic Party. And they were telling their stories, like, just, why they think the way they think and why they're making the change and why they're probably going to end up voting the way that they voted. And I saw a lot of value of that, because a lot of people fall victim to slogans, propaganda, these talking points and things like that aren't relatable to individuals. They just sound really nice in the aggregate in terms of, like, what's said, right? Again, typical stuff that The View would prey on, right? Like, these kind of, like, heartstring kind of comments and things like that are made, but without any true relatable stories behind it, right? And so I wanted some real people to get on and tell real stories about, how they felt about the world and kind of how they lived their life accordingly. So that was the first iteration. The second iteration, I'm really happy to have David partnering with me on, is called Ungovernable. And the real basis behind that is taking that ideological, kind of journey, that pilgrimage, and turning it into finding people that are doing things practically to separate themselves from government dependence. Finding those end arounds so that they can live without having to be reliant on the government and, central mechanisms of control. And so, yeah, there's a lot of really rich information there. we're getting a lot of interesting people on to talk about their backgrounds and how they're actually able to execute it. And I think a lot of the pushback that people get when you recommend that they do some of these things is like, I can't, or I wouldn't know where to start, or like, that seems a lot of work, right? The show is dedicated to showing people that have made it work, and they're giving you their beats in terms of how they got started, the resources, the tools that they used, and everything like that. So,
okay. And what's the word you use? Permaculture? What was it?
Oh yeah. So one of the aspects of it is permaculture, right?
Permaculture.
Like, so, yeah. I mean, we can
What's
get
that?
So we can get deeper into it, like philosophically, in terms of why would you do this? But there's a big movement, and it's cross, like, it's not just libertarian. It's like a lot of lefties and hippies and stuff like that do this too. It's the idea of building like these food forests that are self-sustaining, as opposed to having a front yard garden that just has like some rose bushes and stuff like that in it. Actually building kind of like an ecosystem on land that is somewhat self-sustaining, that provides most, if not all, of your food for the entire year. And it's a lot of work on the front end, but it actually ends up becoming very low maintenance because of that self-sustaining aspect of it.
So it sounds like the self-sustaining, technologically secede, that wasn't just a kind of a series you were doing. That's the point of the show. Am I right in saying that?
Yes. Yeah,
okay. Wow.
yeah.
So are you worried you're gonna like run out of steam and run out of topics or something? It sounds like you kind of pigeonholed yourself.
David will tell you the government gives us more than enough opportunity to find people that are hacking the system, so to speak, to again kind of like separate themselves and not be dependent.
Well, it sounds like picking a specific topic is that's pretty ambitious for that reason. That's now the thing you're gonna. That's pretty exciting. So I guess let's. So you brought David on for the exact purpose of playing up that aspect of the podcast. Is that right?
I brought David on because he's a lot smarter than I am.
Because he's smarter. Okay. Well, I was gonna say, Matt, based on this, you should become the Gulag state. State ordered. First I was gonna think shrink because you're last, but then you switch brands, and so I'm like, well, maybe he can be the life coach or something like that. But I don't know. Now he's not doing a great interview here though, because he just said that David was smarter. So let's interview David instead. Matt, we'll call you. Thank you. We'll keep your resume on file. Okay, David.
I'll go back to the bar. Thank you.
All right, David. Tell me your shtick.
Yeah, I got 8 kids. I'm a teacher.
Whoa.
I'm very interested in trying to promote self-sustainability. But I kind of push back a lot against this libertarian notion of like individualism, because I think that's kind of a myth. So, you have to be able to rely upon other people in your community. And the great thing now is that you don't have to worry about like my next door neighbor. I mean, you do to a certain extent, right? But you have broader communities, right? What this is, right? Through the internet, through online forums, through all different types of stuff, you can find like-minded folk who are going to support you in what things you're trying to do. And that's exactly what Matt is, trying to do with the podcast where we started out. And then I started Blue Star Union with Dan Francisco, which is how I met Matt, which is similar type of idea. It's more, instead of like having a focus on practical solutions, exactly what to do, it's just kind of a thing where we're doing one of those things. So by that, I mean, we're trying to promote getting together with people, physically hang out, get to know people of different stripes, which sounds like something people used to just do in the past, but now we need to like call it a certain thing, right?
Just
like
over the internet.
People.
That's just the medium is different. You don't have to leave your house to do it anymore.
Yeah. So we're trying to get people to actually meet in person as much as possible, to actually, because the other thing is with what we found very quickly with Blue Star, and which you guys I'm sure encounter, and we certainly encounter, is that a lot of people don't want to get on the air and talk. I have tons of people that are really interesting that know tons of stuff. Like I have a good friend who's knows everything about Linux and getting off of your iPhone because they're going to track your stuff and how to get around all that. And I have no idea how to do any of this stuff, but I'm like, that sounds really interesting. Like, can you come on and talk? He's like, yeah, like, and there's tons of those types of people, right? That they just don't, if they have a job, They don't want to get out there and say, yeah, the government's going to get you and you need to do all these things because now you're just a crazy person, right? So a big thing is like actually go to a bar and talk to all these types of people, and we could just have those conversations and we don't have to worry about this, right?
I got that first part down. Go to the bar.
Yeah, that's right.
Then he kept going. Shit. Oh, okay.
Right. Unfortunately, exactly that, right? That used to just be a common thing people did, right? Like the American Revolution was started in bars essentially, right? Because men would go to bars and talk to each other.
Bunch of drunk idiots.
That's right.
Pick a fight with the government.
Yeah, morons. You're just going to get, don't you know they're going to bomb you? So, I mean, that type of restoring that type of community action where it's not like political in the sense of party-based partisan politics, right? But politics from a very traditional perspective of just like community building and getting
the real party,
talking about things.
Real parties instead. Political parties to real parties. That's what this one is.
So,
yeah, that's exactly right.
Partying's fun.
I'm
down with that. I can get behind this movement.
Have parties, get together, drink, talk about stuff that you're interested in. And I mean, that's how you build community. That's how you build friendship. And that's the basis of all society, right? Like we can't have an anarchic society or libertarian society if we don't have stronger friendships. We don't have stronger communities, right? Because you just end up in violence. So the solution to state violence is people learning how to actually build communities and have friendships with one another that they can rely upon and sustain, right? So that's what I try to teach my students. That's what I'm a teacher also. Been teaching for 10 years. That's
what do you teach? What do you teach?
Family. Right now, I'm teaching mostly science classes. I was
in a K through 12. Are you in a K through 12 school?
I teach at a private school. It's 3rd through 12.
God, I almost got you. I was almost.
Hold on, Dave. Tell the backstory. You have some precedent to talk about homeschooling and vacating government schools.
Please do, because this is the stuff I wanted to ask y'all about. Because I've got 3 kids under 3, and I have no idea how I'm planning on educating them yet.
Well, there you go. That's what we're here for. So I taught in the New Jersey public school system. I taught in Newark, New Jersey, which is the largest city in New Jersey. The public schools there. I actually taught in a private Jewish school, all girls class when I was in college, because you can't teach in public schools when you're not out of college yet. But so that was weird. And then so I taught there for a bit, and I taught another public school, which was, I think, the worst paying school district in New Jersey, because in New Jersey, the biggest cities that they have to get paid the top 25%. It's like Abbott decision in New Jersey. There's like the worst paying school districts are like constitutionally mandated to pay what the highest level school districts get paid for their teachers. So, so if you fall just below that, right, you're like the 35th best school district, like worst school district. Like, no, sorry, nothing.
Just the government making smart economic decisions, like they always do.
Of course, yeah.
Wise decision. Okay.
So I actually taught there for a few years, and I just became. I actually really liked teaching in Newark. I really liked teaching in Denellen where I taught, and I just realized it was going to be impossible to me to keep doing my job and keeping my job. So those two things were at odds with one another. And by that, I mean, like the more obviously as you do a job, you get better at it. And so unless you're
this guy,
that guy. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing you'll keep him on for a little bit longer, at least, but
he's useful. He draws attention away from me. Yeah.
There you go. It makes you look better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got less hair than him, so it makes him look like he's eldest over here.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so I taught there. I really enjoyed the experience, but yeah, again, as I got better at my job and I became more invested in the students, I noticed like all of the things that I felt that I needed to do to help my students. The administration was like, "Oh, no, we don't do that. Like, what's wrong with you?" So they basically made it very difficult for me to continue doing the job the way I needed to do it if I was going to continue doing it. So I ended up leaving there and moving down near DC. And I teach at all boys private school there, and it's awesome, and I really like it there. Just a difference in tone at a
all
private
boys,
school.
yeah, I bet you do.
Yeah, that's right. Lots of advantages. Yeah, no, it's good. It's great. The fact that parents are buying into the school, right, both literally and figuratively, makes it a lot better. If they don't want to be there, then they're just going to choose to send their money to some other school and go there instead. Like, that we're not forcing them to be here. And I feel like one of the hardest parts about being a public school teacher for me was like giving homework. Even like I'm some agent of the state and I'm telling you to go home and like do this. And like, I think this is better for you. But like, now I'm going to give you demerits or like hurt your future job prospects because you didn't do some arbitrary assignment I gave you. Like, this is like, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Isn't K through 12 like, is it the worst thing ever? Like, if we're going to make like a bottom 5, it's really competing for the number 1 spot of like worst things that have ever existed. Right.
Yeah. I think public
Are y'all
schools
with me on that?
the worst thing ever created ever.
I have a question, because you went from all girls school to all boys school. Do you find any utility to the segregation of sexes? Because I keep hearing that boys and girls learn at different paces. Have you seen that? Does that help? Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I had no idea that was like, I was very skeptical of that claim because I went to public school and I actually went to 2 parochial schools that I absolutely hated. First from kindergarten to 3rd grade, and then I was probably going to get kicked out of there. So my parents sent me to a different school, and then I was probably going to get kicked out of there. So then they sent me to a public school finally, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, they're all up in my business trying to tell me every little thing I did. Like, I wasn't a bad kid. Like, I just like didn't do every stupid little thing they wanted me to do. So they got upset with me. So I was always getting in trouble. And anyway, when I went to public school, they were like, yeah, whatever. Like, you're just a kid. And I was like, yes, thank you. So I really actually enjoyed my time in public school. There's all types of problems that were there, but it was much better than my parochial school experience. So sorry, I forgot the train of my thought.
Yeah, that happens. That happens.
Segregation of the sexes.
Yeah. So
does it matter?
So when I heard about, separating them or whatever, I was like, what is this? Like, I went to school. This is my only experience. I don't see any reason or utility to this. But especially, and then when I taught in school, it was always not segregated in public school. And then I had that one experience where it was segregated in the Jewish school during my time in college. And then, but yeah,
the religions, they don't give a fuck, man. They'll do it.
That's right. Segregate all we want.
Yeah, we're religious motherfuckers. They're already going to hate us. Doesn't matter.
That's right. So then going to where I teach now, for the right away, like within the first few months, I realized how big of a difference it was, especially teaching the all boys side of things, because I feel like the public school caters more towards females. Mm-hmm. So I didn't notice as big of a difference in the Jewish school when I was teaching the all girls class, but then teaching the all boys classes, it was like night and day. I couldn't believe how different it was. That was one of always my challenges when I was teaching in public school also was you're essentially teaching 2 different classes at the same time. You're teaching a class for the boys and you're teaching a class for the girls, and you have to try to all different types of things I did. Like, I had these like learning journals where they would write stuff about what they were learning in the beginning of class or whatever. And that was like the greatest thing ever for me to get along with the girls in the class, because they would be upset about something I did or, said or whatever. And then they would write it in the journal and they'd be like, I can't believe you took 5 points off of this thing or whatever else. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like, I wanted to know that. But like a dude is never writing that, right? A dude's just going to let you know right away. Like, dude, come on, that's not fair, whatever. Right. And like, the girl's not going to do that, but she would write it in the journal and then I would know what was going on. I was like, oh, okay. That's why you've been kind of pissy at me for the last 2 days. I would have no idea. Right. So like universally, the boys wrote nothing in those journals. They were like, what are you doing? Why would this even exist? This is the stupidest thing in the world. And all the girls were like, yes, learning journal time. Like, so, just even a very simple thing like that, which I kind of fell into. And I noticed very clearly the difference between the way that the 2 genders were responding to them. But then, teaching in an all boys school now, it's like, it's unimaginable to me to ever want to go back to teaching mixed sex classes.
Now, is there a grade or an age where they converge, like where you should start co-ed teaching boys and girls, or you really just wait till university before a boy sees his first girl?
Yeah, right around 13. 13. Yeah, this will be perfect right now.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not like an expert on this, but my intuition would be that it would be best to keep the school setting segregated and probably until college.
Okay. All the way.
I think especially the camaraderie that builds up in our like junior and senior classes. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't imagine that being the same if it's a mixed sex class. Like, those guys are friends for the rest of their life because they've been to school with each other from 3rd grade through 12th grade. And there's just a different type of camaraderie and friendship that you can have amongst a bunch of guys who are playing sports together, who are, giving each other a hard time about things all day long and whatever else. Right. And then your junior and senior year, you revel in that, right? Like as all men do when they get together. And when there's women there, it just changes the dynamic. And obviously that can be better in some instances, but like that, to have that type of friendship and closeness, that intimacy, it really kind of caps their senior year. And I find that would probably be not this. It just couldn't be the same thing if you had half girls and half boys.
So how does this play into Matt's obsession with homeschool? Like, are you guys on the same sync when it comes to that? Because you sound like you're more of a kind of a private school advocate, if I'm hearing you right, which is cool. But
yeah, no, I'm not at all. In fact, it's
okay.
even further extreme than Matt, because I hate the term homeschooling as a term, because I think schooling in general is like the worst thing ever. So I think that's one of the biggest problems actually with the homeschooling movement, is that they try to bring school into the home. And they want to school their kids. They just don't want the government schooling their kids. And I think that's like everybody's missing the point, which is that you shouldn't be trying to school your kids, understand by what school has meant for the last 100 years in the United States, at least. Like that's not a good thing to be doing to your student, to your kids. That's not a good thing that we want to be having as a society as a whole. And this was actually that was the main point and impetus of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, was that you shouldn't be trying to school children. They're like that. You're making them into slaves. Like it wasn't meant to be a criticism of slavery. Everybody knew slavery was wrong. He was trying to point out that what society is trying to do to children is akin to slavery, which is obviously bad. And ironically, taught in schools everywhere around the country now as some type of anti-slavery screed. And it's like, no. This is meant to be anti-school. And I think this is also why you have all the negative side effects of homeschooling, right? Because you have like the stereotypical like religious zealot parents who have their kid at home and like, we're going to school you into our indoctrination, our exact beliefs, and you're not going to get affected by anything else. And
you're saying that's wrong? You're saying I shouldn't be doing that?
I mean, you do you to your kids, but I think that is not a good idea.
So Matt, you're basically on the same page as him with all this stuff?
Yeah. So this, by the way, is part of the reason why I also love having David on the program, is because he takes, so like I'm using the normie word, and I was probably a little bit on his side of the fence to begin this conversation, but he basically is converting me over to this idea, and which, by the way, my kids are unschooled at home. So we actually don't follow a specific curriculum. We pull from different curriculums, whatever the kids want to learn, we kind of like just facilitate their learning, right? So in practice, I've always kind of been on his side of the fence. I've been using normie words like the word homeschool because obviously you're like trying to communicate to others. You're trying to use their verbiage, right? And so, yeah, the word homeschool is a catch-all, but part of what we're exploring with the show is also just how wide the range of alternatives are to a traditional Prussian-style public school system. And so that takes the form of unschooling, world schooling. There's like a very wide spectrum. And Dave's right. Like if you try and just duplicate what they do in the school in your home, you're actually maybe worse off, because now you're essentially just replicating that, and you're undermining what would be considered that home life aspect of what's going to help nurture your kids. Look at that.
Okay.
Dave is more than in favor of his final completion of the conversion here.
Okay, I've got a really important question for y'all, because this is actually the route we're going to be taking with my kids. It's called a homeschool co-op.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to be doing. So y'all are okay with something like, whew, okay, thank God. Because it is kind of like, it's just really the community doing it, and they're passing the kids off between all the different houses and stuff, but they're still in a home. And that's sacrilege, right? According to David, right? Is it okay if it's lots of different homes? Then it okay?
Yeah. I mean, personally, my kids are in a homeschool co-op.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Some of them are. I'm always.
I guess we need to change the name. The homeschool being called homeschool. What should we call it instead?
Co-op.
A commune school.
Remove the home part.
Dave likes the word learning.
Yeah,
learning co-op. Yeah,
the learning place.
I don't like the co-op at all. Like I think it's like it's a necessary evil, because the only way you can get other parents to spend a significant amount of time outside of the house engaging with other kids is if you justify it by some type of schooling activity. But personally, and I've tried to my wife and I have tried to get other parents to do this is like, why don't we just meet at the park on Tuesday from, 8 to 10 or whatever? But like, no. Like they need to do chemistry. Like, okay, so we just have this pretense where we're learning some subject matter that no one's ever going to remember, but like, fine, whatever. Like that's the only way you can get people to actually give up their time during the day, because everybody's under this myth that like every hour needs to be spent learning a particular subject or doing some particular thing. And if you're going to get someone to drive their kids or, schedule time in their day for an hour or two or whatever, it needs to be justified by some type of credit in some type of quasi class where I think
then you find out Miss Jones down the street was teaching them gender theory or something, right? On Thursday. Great. Does that ever happen?
Yeah.
That's, believe it or not happened to me. Yeah. No, I do. You'll see that I'm generally pushing back against these types of things. Like, I just think people should just do normal human activities. And the problem with homeschooling as a thing is like, it's always kind of judged by some, like, are we keeping up with the school? Are they learning enough of their credits? Are they getting enough of these things? And like, that's why when I talk to a lot of people that push back on it, I'm like, you could just not send your kids to school like that.
Well, it's all we have. It's the only kind of reference point that you can really use sometimes. Because, I was K through 12. So if I'm going to ask myself the question, am I doing a good job making these kids smart? That's the only thing I can compare it to. So I would think to myself, like, that's kind of why I would, in my mind, think, okay, well, let's check back on them when they're 10 and then see how much they know compared to the average fifth grader. It would just be a way for me to verify, okay, what I'm doing is working, because he knows way more math than a fifth grader in public school.
Yeah. So
right. Is that smart?
That's actually the shortcoming of the public school model, the Prussian model. It's this factory-based model where, you try and create a certain number of widgets, and then you quality test the widgets that come off the end of the line to see whether or not they pass muster, right? The truth is, so like, speaking personally from an unschooling standpoint, my two eldest, my son is much better in subjects than my daughter is. And my daughter reads at like a college age level, and she's 11, right? But there's other things that she doesn't do, where most parents would be appalled, like, oh, well, you didn't cover that, math, theorem yet or whatever. And I'm like, no, because when she gets to the point where she wants to, or she needs to, she'll find a way. Like she'll pick up a book, or I'll provide her with a resource in order to be able to do it. The beauty of what David's talking about is you can let it's the difference between trying to make a bunch of kids look cookie cutter at the end of the line versus allowing like the organic self-assembly of a fucking savant. Excuse me, can I curse on the program? I don't know if I can curse.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
I've been cursing like a sailor over here.
Just a fucking savant in one area, right? Like, and all these other areas, like David said, like, you're teaching a kid that might end up becoming part of the visual arts chemistry. What do they give a shit about chemistry, right? Like, it doesn't matter to that kid. If they're in the, like, what would have happened if like Picasso or Van Gogh was held back because they're like, oh, hold on, you haven't done your, like, you haven't done your math studies, right? Like, you can't go paint, kid. You have to go do your math. Like, those kind of things are complete arbitrary constructs, and they actually do more to retard the brilliance and the exceptionalism that a kid could achieve in some area. And it plays out across the board. It's not just traditional subjects. Like, there's a lot of kids that aren't well served by that traditional education model that are amazing at being a mechanic or a laborer or like designing things, right? Like, even graphic arts, like, my daughter is amazing at drawing digitally. I do not have an artistic bone in my body. My wife is the artist, but she is way ahead of where she would have been if she was in a traditional school environment where she was only able to dedicate 45 minutes a day toward that versus doing it for 8 hours straight if she wants.
That makes a lot of sense, because they kind of like K through 12, they're trying to make you a Swiss Army knife of education where you know everything. But then when you go to university, it's all about finding a specialization and hammering down that and getting really good at one thing. Like, Chris and I are both really good at, certain aspects of a certain industry. It's very niche. Really, if you could start working niche towards something at a younger age, that gets you ahead of the curve in the career you might end up with. And if it's something you have a natural inclination for, perfect. Like, keep going. Like, so what if you're not good at math? Like, that's the opposite of me. I'm good at math. You can go be good at reading. We can both serve our different roles in society.
Yeah, but more than that, though, right, is that learning how to be a master at one thing makes it so much easier to be a master at another thing, right? If I learn how to do anything, right, like if I learn how to, say I learn Russian, right, like I'm going to be way better when I need to learn chemistry, even though they might have nothing to do with each other, because I understand how to learn. I understand how to master something. So I have a good learning has to happen interiorly. There's no way you can make someone learn a thing. Right. I know this as a teacher every day. Right. Like I need to get this kid to be like, I want to learn this thing for whatever reason. Right. And motivate them. So if you can get someone to learn a thing and experience mastery, that's the real self-feedback. That's what dopamine does. Right. Dopamine is meant to reward you when you learn something. And so the idea that you're going to learn a new thing, which every kid does, and they're like, wow, that's awesome. Now I know that thing. And then they get super excited when they see it and all those other type of things. And we do this in our own life. The school completely like ruins that experience, and it makes it all based off of exterior. Did I actually know this? Like the worst thing is when a kid finishes a test and you're like, how'd you do? And like, I have no idea. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you not know?
I'm pretty sure I don't read books because of public school, because I hate it. I've read maybe like 5 books in my life, like on my own, by my own
Sid
choice.
Arthur, or
like what?
The Tale of Two Cities, like Charles Dickens.
Yeah. Grapes of Wrath. Well, The Jungle, just these great pieces of poetic brilliance. Yeah. No, I've read, like, aside from the books that I was forced to read in public school, I've chosen to read maybe like 5 books. That's why I feel really bad pumping people's book. Like I was trying to pump Scott Horton's book on the show. And so I had to like grind my way through 5. And it's a good book, but just me reading books is hard because I just hate it, because I think it's because public school, dude, because they just first they give you books that are way beyond your level that you shouldn't be reading anyway, because they have the idea that they want to challenge us and have us look up words in the dictionary we don't know. And so they give a high school kid Tale of Two Cities. And nobody can read that book. Even adults can't read that book. It's so hard to read and boring. And so I went to engineering school and I never read another book again.
Well, to your point, Chris, you suffered through Scott Horton's book because you wanted to, not because he was making you, right?
No, it's because I was having him on my show. And if I was going to ask him about his book, I had to read some of it or it would be really rude.
That is enigmatic of, like, so many people have these stupid little tropes about, first of all, the socialization myth. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. It's complete bullshit. Like, my kids know tons of kids of different age ranges and stuff like that. And they talk to adults and they have conversations on a different level than their peers that are going to public school. Because
that's a big enchilada, man. That's what everybody says sucks about homeschooling.
That's a bullshit trope. The second one, it's just a cop-out. It's actually like calling something racist, right? Like going back to the first clip, right? You call something racist so that you can shut down the conversation, so that you can't be critical. You can't have an intellectual conversation from that point forward. As soon as someone does that, just stop having the conversation or push back. And if they won't give back, then cut the conversation, because you're never going to be able to have an intelligible conversation after they get to that point, because that's a shut up, fuck you kind of comment. Like, I don't want to talk about it and you're a bad person, right? The same thing can be said about the other things that people say, like, oh, well, how will your kid ever understand how to, like, pay for something at the store? Well, if he wants something at the store, he's going to figure out how many dollars and how many cents he has to put on the counter. And if he doesn't do the right amount, then he doesn't get the thing, right? Like, it sounds simple, and it is, but there is such and I would liken this to, of all the things that we talk about, education, I think, is the biggest key that is de-emphasized in the liberty movement. Every single person right now that people in the liberty movement are trying to talk to, they're trying to wade through 30 years of propaganda and indoctrination bullshit to try and reprogram them. Okay. It's why COVID is an opportunity, because it's one of those kind of like, 8 on the Richter scale earthquakes that shakes a number of people loose. But short of that, you still have a huge amount of the population that is beholden to these things that have been programmed into their head over a lifetime. Removing kids from a public education system is the one biggest thing that we can do as far as a liberty movement, because there's no way you're going to get a plurality of people to see your way after they've had shit pounded into their heads for a generation generations at this point that have just become like, oh, it's common knowledge that this or this. The perfect example that I've come up with recently is I also do kind of like offshoot episodes on natural rights with a dude who's just a savant in terms of doing legal background research. He works for, actually runs the American Natural Rights Foundation out of Montana. And one of the things that came up was the Civil War and how Lincoln is basically a war criminal. And if you ask most kids coming out of the public education system, what do they learn about Lincoln? What's the one thing?
I'm talking about it a million times.
And
does Lincoln come
right?
up on every episode we have?
The Emancipation Proclamation. No one talks about the riots that happened in New York City right after he made that speech. No one talks about that.
We got to move on from Lincoln, or that'll be the rest of the show. But your point is taken. Like, the Civil War really is like a symbol for everything that's wrong with K through 12. That's part of the reason why I bring it up so much. It's a big nut to crack for sure.
We did a bit on how Merriam-Webster's changed the definitions of words in the middle of the Civil War because they saw the North winning. And quite frankly, had they not made those changes, we wouldn't have the problems we have today. Because they changed the meaning of the words individual, freedom, state, government, federal. Like, it is ridiculous. So anyway, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah. So hey, Nick, you were telling me before the show happened, you had some concerns. Have your concerns been alleviated, or you want to ask about them?
Well, I guess not 100%, because the way Texas works, we have independent school districts. I don't know if y'all have those up in New Jersey or on the East Coast. But the independent school districts in Texas have the ability to draw their own lines, their own districts, and they're their own taxing authority. So anything within their own drawn district, they get to pull the property taxes out of those homes. And what it creates is, like me, I moved to an affluent neighborhood because my property taxes will then fund the local school, which is part of the reason why I chose the neighborhood. And I know it's a great school. And these are the schools that are direct funnels to the Texas state universities. Like, Chris and I are both products of the University of Texas. And if you're in the top 8% of your class, which, I remember the competition, it's not hard to do. You get automatic admission to some of the best schools in Texas.
It was 10 when I was.
They had to lower it to 8%. It'd probably be lower, 6% by the time my kids are.
Yeah. So all my friends were smarter than me, and they were taking AP classes and everything. But I figured I had to game the system, and I just took all regular courses with all the idiots, and I got a way better GPA than they did. So they had to go to Texas Tech and, UNT.
So my ISD segregates even further. So if you take regular classes, the best you can get is a 6.0 GPA. You have to take the K level and AP classes if you want a 7.0 GPA. So if you're just on level, which really means below level, you're like automatically cut below the K level kids, and then they're all competing for the college slots. So it is very segregated, very income driven. And, that's where a lot of criticisms of the Texas system come from, is if you're in a poor neighborhood, or if you're, God forbid, in Houston, independent school district, which is, all the rich people don't go live in those districts because they don't want their kids going to those schools. They get way left behind. But now I'm in this position where the public school option is a good option. And it's, I went through it. I know exactly what it is. I'm in a good neighborhood. I know that, the parents around me are the ones who go to the school board, and they're the ones dictating the curriculum. If they don't like critical race theory, every single one of them is going to say it. And in my district, that's going to happen because every other yard has a MAGA sign in front of it. So that said, though, I'm still open to the idea of, okay, what are my other options? Should I try private school? Maybe, whatever I do, it's going to have a heavy-handed intervention for myself, being involved in the kids' education, asking them what they learn. Whenever they're learning civil history, the Civil War in their history class the first time, and say, okay, you learned that. Now here's Thomas de Lorenzo. You got to read his book, The Real Lincoln, at the same time, and you need to compare what you've learned. So there's that intervening factor that I would introduce. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, at least a K through 5 or K through middle school, do they really need to be in that structured cookie cutter, just, regurgitation, problem solving, memorization? Or can I put them in a Montessori school? Can I try something different? I don't think I can experiment when they're younger, because especially the first few years, all they're doing is macaroni art. Do you guys have any advice on, what I could weigh starting off, because my kids, I have twin boys that are 2.5 right now, so they're going to be the first up to bat.
Bless you. All right. I'll let you take a crack at that first, Dave.
Yeah, no, I would say to hold off sending your kids to any school as long as possible. I mean, that's my theory. So, I mean,
yeah, like Matt said, they'll end up retarded.
That's a quote, actually.
Yeah, I got you now, Matt. Down.
Redacted immediately.
Didn't he say they were fucking retarded? I think that was it. Yeah, no, I my personal philosophy and what I think would be best for every student is to not go to school for as long as possible, which I understand might hurt my bottom dollar at some end, but like I just don't think that it's a good thing at all. So that again, I understand people always criticize me. It's like, oh, that doesn't work for everybody. I'm like, all right, fine. Like, don't do that then. Like, I'm not like you're like forcing you to do whatever. Like that would just be my advice. And that doesn't work for every family. I don't know your situation and your wife or your other kids, how that works for everybody. So like, obviously do what works best for your family. The longer you can hold that off though, I think the better. And I think to your point about like a Montessori school or other types of schools, like all these things end up just being marketing phrases. You have no idea what it means, right? Like I've been in lots of different Burger Kings and they're all different, right? Like some are really crappy, some are good, like whatever. Just because it's called Burger King doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You know, it means there's some type of similarity, right? But I think like going to a school, right, get to meet the administrators, get to talk to some of the teachers and just ask them simple questions. And if they see you as the primary educator of your kids, you're probably going to have a somewhat decent relationship. If they think that the idea is that you're supposed to drop your kids off there and let them take care of them, and then like you could try to stay out of the way, right? Because they're the experts, and like you should have no relationship with these people whatsoever. So that would be kind of my like. Again, you seem like a pretty intelligent person, right? Like if you care about your kids and you're paying attention, you're going to make good decisions, and that's what I tell to every parent that asks me these types of things. Like just pay attention to your kid. Like don't be ideological about it and be like, no, they have to do homeschooling or they have to go to private school or whatever else, right? Like just pay attention to your kid.
This isn't daycare. This is their education.
Yeah.
Well, so and there's a lot to unpack there too. I would say that.
What do you think?
What is this, Mr. Deeds?
Look at me.
That's what Ungovernable wants for your kids.
That's right. Every man homeless.
All right. Do you guys have go ahead? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, there's a ton to unpack there. One, a lot of colleges have now begun actively recruiting homeschooled and unschooled kids because they think differently.
Really?
Two, even if the school district is a good school district, you also got to remember that it's also teaching them things that it's tough to deprogram when they get home. So there is an arbitrary hierarchy that's created within a school district, and it's teaching them obedience to that hierarchy, right? So again, take it for what it is. If that's something that you're okay with, then that's fine. If it's something that you take opposition to, then obviously it's going to be difficult to kind of break that. You know, the statistic is like most kids spend about 14,000 hours in public school if they go straight from kindergarten all the way through, grade 12. As a parent, how are you ever going to deprogram 12,000 hours of indoctrination, right? Or 14,000 hours of indoctrination.
Just to jump in real quick, parents always overestimate their ability to do that. That's generally my impression is like, well, I'm going to correct that at home, whatever else. And you say that, but then like, they have 7-8 hours of classes all day. Then they come home and they're like, I just want to play some video games or chill out or hang out with my brother or whatever. And you're like, no, hold on. I need to correct what your teacher said in the history class.
Your son's going to come back with purple hair one day and you're going to go, what the hell happened? That's it. I'm calling Ungovernable up real quick. I should have listened to them.
Or they have their scheduled sports. Like you want to bring them to wrestling practice, you want to bring them to whatever thing, and then it's like just the time runs out.
Wrestling practice started today.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to have the time and space to correct for all those types of things. So that it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do that. It's just I find that a lot of times when I talk to parents, especially of younger children, I think they overestimate how much time and energy it takes to do that. And like the kids just smoked at the end of the day, right? Like they've been at school all day and they just want to relax. Like, okay, now you're talking about my classes. Like, give me a break, like, come on.
Yeah.
I've had enough.
Doesn't look good, Nick.
Is the brainwashing does it occur because of the structure of the schools, or is it particular classes? Is it just the little comments that teachers will make? Like, because not all 14,000 of those hours are brainwashed. Like algebra is algebra, right? So what is how do they get them? Because like whatever conditioning they tried to put on me, obviously it didn't work because I'm here talking to y'all and I'm very politically inclined or aligned with y'all. But that's not the case for everyone.
The quality control inspector at the end of the line threw you into the damaged goods bin.
It obviously didn't work on me, these indoctrination camps, but everybody else is who has the problem.
That's right.
So the answer is yes, it's all of the above, right? I mean, like a lot of schools, you still sit in lines, right? It's still shut up, don't talk. There's still tons of course hours where it's, teacher in front, you brought up the, segregation of sexes within schools. Like, part of the reason why you would advocate for something like that is boys are loud and crazy and destructive, and girls are typically, again, on average, not all of them, but are, a little bit more inclined to like actually sit there and observe and kind of like chill out.
Be obedient. Just say it.
Well, if you've met my daughters, you would disagree, but they learn how to be disobedient in a very subversive way. I tell it, or less grandiose, right? But so yeah, it's all of the above. I mean, it's what is taught or what isn't taught, right? It's how it's taught. It's the arbitrary systems that are in place, like in-school suspension for doing something, homeschool. There was actually, I forget where I was listening to it, but actually one of the guys on Twitter was telling his story about how he never made it through the end of high school, and part of the reason why was he got in a fist fight with his vice principal because his mom was sick. He had to work overnight shifts. He came into school, fell asleep. Then they gave him in-school suspension. And then the teacher tried to keep him over so that he couldn't go to work. So he punched the teacher in the face and went to work, right? Like,
what else are you going to do?
Like, that's just, again, it's an extreme example, but that's just, that arbitrary kind of one size fits all, regulatory structure that's in there. One other note about Texas. Texas is an interesting state. So New Jersey is a fantastic state to homeschool in for now because it's almost unregulated. You basically don't even have to register your kid as a homeschooler. You just keep them home and you teach them what you want, which is absolutely fantastic. And, we will fight to the dire end to protect that. Texas is interesting because if you hit certain metrics, co-ops can actually qualify for state funding. And so I just put out a tweet that got a lot of mileage. Chris commented on it. And one of the guys responded and he was like, look, I'm in the Houston area. He was like, I am a member of a 300 family co-op. And we're going to have him on the show in the next few weeks. And he opened it up and he said, look, if anyone wants any information on how to get started and, where to go and how to get involved, like just hit me up and I will give you information. And that's that community
fantastic.
aspect of it. Yeah, that's the community aspect. It's people helping others to do things that otherwise you would think, the government would have to do, which is also the argument for anyone who says like, I work full time. How would I ever do it? I'm poor. How would I ever do it? Co-ops are a fantastic, like David said, necessary evil. But again, you can shop for them too, just the way you would like a private school or something like that. But co-ops are a good kind of give someone the ability to work full time and still participate in their kids' educations because a lot of co-ops meet odd hours, they meet weekends, and a lot of them, again, some are more strict and some of them are wide open. My kids are in 3 co-ops.
I wish they didn't call it co-op because they might as well call it like Karl Marx homeschooling or something.
Hippy dippy homeschool.
Hippy dippy homeschool.
Can I just jump in real quick on the question you asked, Nick? I think is really good about what's going on. Some schools, I think there's 2 things that I wanted to address. One is it doesn't seem like the schools around me are that bad. There's a lot of good people in my community. I trust them. I like the public school near me, and that's reasonable. I get that. Secondly, it seems to be like, well, how does the brainwash happen? Maybe there is some type of brainwashing stuff going on or negative effects that I don't see because of the structure and all those types of things. And I think Matt addressed that. Like even just having to ask to go to the bathroom all the time is a weird thing, right? Like my kids live in my house and they go to the bathroom whenever they want. Like, yeah, sometimes there's like 2 bathrooms and one of them is being taken, but like my kid doesn't come to me every time they have to go to the bathroom, right? Like,
where you have to ask to go to the bathroom? Prison.
The pledge. I can't believe it. The pledge.
Could you imagine like asking your professor at university, "Oh, can I go to the bathroom in the
No,
middle
that's
of
what
his
I
lecture?"
say, right? Like in a professional setting, I tell my students all the time, like if I'm in the meeting with the headmaster of our school and other teachers, the last thing I would ever want to do is bring attention to the fact that I'm leaving the meeting to go to the bathroom. Right? If I really need to go to the bathroom, I'm going to try to do so as quietly as possible without interrupting. And the same thing when you're late, right? When kids are late to school, they're like, "Here's my pass. I was late." It's this big thing. It's like, no, like quietly come in and sit down. And if there's some type of thing you missed, I'll come and talk to you afterwards. Or you come up to me after and say, "Hey man, sorry, I was late. I had to go to the bathroom. Did I miss anything? Whatever, my bad." Okay, fine. Absolutely.
It teaches an excuse making mentality. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. Did New Jersey add the New Jersey pledge to y'all's school like Texas did?
Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, Texas, by the end of school in Texas, every single morning we would say the American pledge, we'd say the Texas pledge. We'd have a moment of silence for the fallen soldiers, and sometimes it'd be longer than others if it was like a holiday or something. And if you were walking in the hallway and you aren't in class, when that comes on the announcements, everybody has to stop walking, because I guess it angers the ghosts of the veterans or something. You have to stop, and they'll yell at you if they see you walking. It's a moment of silence. You have to stop walking.
Dick Cheney will shoot you in the face if you say anything.
It would make Ronald Reagan go like, "Jesus Christ, like, do we need to be doing this?" Like,
check this out. I still remember to this day. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Indivisible.
Yeah.
Are we talking about splitting up Texas or something? Did I not hear about that?
Whoever wrote that hasn't spent any time below the Rio Grande Valley. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, real quick, what I was going to say to you, to those questions, I think, is that like you have to also look at the opportunity cost, right? Like perhaps this isn't evil and bad for
my language,
but like perhaps they could be doing a lot better things in this time, right? So like there's so much time. It's 8 hours a day or whatever. And as I was saying before, it's a lot of time and energy. So like could that time and energy be used towards something else where they're developing a love for something, where they're just developing the ability to go outside and play and get their hands dirty, which is a huge thing that people are missing out on. Like the ability just to learn by something fell on my foot and hurt, right? Like you learn a lot about the world and how things work. When, my kid's bike chain gets broken, he's 6 years old and he like has to try to get it back on. And I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, I can go do it. But I'm like, no, I'm going to let him struggle with this, right? Because you learn a lot by trying to get that bike chain back on and realizing, no, I got to spend it this way. And if I do it that, my hands are going to hurt. And you let them kind of mess with that a bit. And then, oh man, okay, let me try to show you how to do it. Like those types of interactions with the real world and getting out into the world and learning about those things, talking about things. To Matt's point, going to the store. My kids go to the store far more than any other kids because they're not sheltered being in a school, right? They're out with their mom going to the grocery store. Like my kids go to a game store. They go walk to the store and pick up snacks or whatever. Like they do tons of things like that. So they have to learn how to navigate those things. So it's not just, is this a bad thing? Which of course is like the first level thing you want to look at, right? Like do no harm, right? But then also like, could I be doing something better? Which is what I think everybody, that's like my number one message to parents is if what you think you're doing right now is the best thing for your kid, awesome. I have no problem with you. I'm not going to, don't listen to me or whatever. I do whatever you want to do. Right. But like, you should be asking yourself, is this the best situation I could be doing? Could I be doing better things with my kid? Could I, think outside the box? Could I do something on the weekend? Could I do part-time school? Could I do this, that? Like, just think about it, right? Like be attentive to the needs of your children and your family. And on a regular basis, every 6 months or whatever else, re-examine it. Am I doing the right thing for them? Have they been out of sorts lately? Is this really working? Whatever. And then just be open to the idea that maybe I'll need to change something or I will change something if my kid demands it. Instead of just saying, no, Jamie, you need to do this. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you, which is a message that a lot of our students get. And there's all types of really negative side effects that from a mental health perspective for our students, especially our boy students who are in middle school, who are in a very great anguish, many of them, because they're told there's something wrong with them because they go to school and they're not happy. Like
middle school sucks, man. That's the worst one.
Yeah. And you're made to feel guilty because you're not happy. Like that's the worst type of unhappiness, right? Because now there's something wrong with me because I'm not happy in this setting. Like I'm not even complaining about it. I'm not even whatever. I'm just not happy, and now it's my fault, and that's just absolute terrible. So that would be my 2 cents about that.
So
what do you think?
You've highlighted a lot of things that are different and sound better, but my impression is it sounds like it's all like free and unstructured. But that can't be the case. It's because with education, there's a certain amount of repetition and just raw memorization that still occurs, or is there a completely different approach that y'all are taking?
In my situation, no, we don't really do a ton of repetition or curriculum. We don't follow really anything. So I make sure my kids can read. That's like there's two things I want my kids to know how to do. Really, the first thing more than anything is reading. If a kid can read and
shut the hell up.
Yeah. Being able that's a huge thing, right? Because going around complaining to people is not good. So I know you're kind of joking, but like being able to like, hey, go play outside and leave me alone, right? Or go in the other room and read a book, whatever. Like learn to
be bored.
Be bored.
Learn to be bored. Yeah.
Learn to be with your thoughts for 5 or 10 minutes. Like, right. Like just, shut up. Right. That it sounds like mean spirited, but that's actually a really important part of growing up. And one thing that my kids are very good at, because they're at home for a lot of the day and they have to learn to entertain themselves. So, I mean, they spend like 5 hours in the woods in their kitchen, like fooling around with each other and making meals and with dirt and water. And we're like, they write menus for it. They write cards to people. Like it's not some activity, right? They just come up with it because kids learn how to play and they learn a lot through play. Now I have an advantage because I have 8 kids, 7 are at home. And so they have each other to play with. Right. So there's a lot of advantages there, right? If you have 1 or 2 kids at home, it's hard for them to do activities together and learn to kind of have that playtime with one another. But
I didn't know the Jews had a lot of kids too. Is that something Jews do?
Some Jews, yeah. Hasidic Jews for certain.
Really? They're still into that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's good. They're going up against the Catholics and the Mexicans. They got their work cut out for them, dude.
They do. Catholics have been not doing so hot recently. So no.
Progressivism, dude.
It is. It's progressivism.
That's thing, though.
But like it's focusing on something in my mind that keeps coming back. Is like, say you're teaching algebra or calculus, where it really is you just need to solve thousands of different problems. Mm-hmm. And that's that repetition I'm speaking about. To learn the problem solving pathways, you really need to just solve a whole bunch of different problems.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, there's no backyard throw the football way you can learn calculus.
Yeah, right. I mean, so my son is a rising freshman. He was doing calculus the summer after his 6th grade year, like on Khan Academy and stuff, because he wanted to. My dad's an engineer.
How great is Khan Academy?
Khan Academy is just online. It goes everything all the way up.
I'm just saying, how great is it though? Like
it's awesome.
You can just YouTube these classes.
It's wonderful. Yeah. And if you don't like Khan Academy, there's some other YouTube videos for whatever thing. Like,
endless number of Indians to teach your kids on YouTube.
That's right. God didn't make 2 billion of them for nothing.
Well, we're teaching their kids, so they kind of owe us, right?
That's a good point. Yeah. So like my dad's an engineer. My dad was staying us for a bit and he was like, oh, cool. I want to get into learning more about electronics and how this all stuff works. So he went on Khan Academy, and one of the Khan Academy videos he looked at was a more advanced video that had like double integrals. And he's like, I don't know what this is. And I'm like, yeah, you're in 6th grade. Why would you know what a double integral is? Yeah. So I'm like, that's why you have to learn calculus. Like, if you want to know what that does, you have to learn that. And he's like, all right, fine. So he was already pretty good at algebra by that point.
Why'd you learn calculus? Because I wanted to know what those 2 S's were.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's why we learn lots of things, right? So he's like, I want to know what that says. So I went until he started going through those videos, and he finished basically like the Calc AB curriculum for Khan Academy that summer. And he's been like, and then sometimes he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not motivated to do this anymore. And he won't learn any more math for that amount of time, whatever. But like when he is, he's like, yeah, you know what? I actually want to figure that out. Then I can help him. I'm in a privileged position in the fact that I'm very good at math, and that's what I studied in college. And, but I can help him with that. But even so, just a Khan Academy exercises and being able to watch videos and do that type of work is something that he can do when he's motivated. And I tell him all the time, just like what Nick said, that's what I'm preaching to my students all the time. The only way to learn is by doing. You have to do the problems. If you don't do the problems, you're not going to learn anything by listening to me or reading your book 5 times over. Like, do the problems and then do the problems again.
Not a spectator sport.
Right? Yeah. So, but the beautiful thing is that you can do that all now with Khan Academy, with books, with tons of exercise worksheets. I mean, as a teacher, I'm spoiled with options. I just go online and look up free worksheets for calculus or whatever. I'm going to get tons of them. Right. So, there's all these type of opportunities. The problem is that some students aren't motivated, and the vast majority of students are not motivated. And I would say precisely because they're in the public school, they're not motivated. If they weren't there, they'd be more motivated. Like, what am I going to learn today? Like, do I just want to sit on my ass and do nothing? Like, no, I want to probably learn something because I can be an adult, right? Like, kids oftentimes are inspired to be like the adults in their life. Like my son, who's like, hey, I want to be an engineer. My grandpa's an engineer, and that looks really cool. I'm going to get into that. And like, that doesn't mean he's going to do that, right? But for a short period of time, he was like really motivated by that and wanted to learn a bunch of things. And he was tinkering around with things and taking apart things and looking at them. And, you know, he was having a great time with that. And then he's interested in something else, you know, a few months later, and that's fine. You know, that's that time in college that everybody spends like explore and get to know themselves, my kids are doing as kids, right? Like they're looking into engineering and writing. Like my kids write plays all the time that they put on for us because they like doing it. It's really fun, right? But they write them themselves, and then they have different parts, and they do the whole thing, and it's a lot of fun, right? Playing games with each other. I think games are like the number one way that we learn, right? Through sports and through games, from a physical perspective and from an intellectual perspective, right? Being able to play competitive games against others forces us to learn how to be a human being in order to engage with other people in a socialized manner, right? That's a huge thing with socialization, which is why I'm such a big fan of games. If you can learn how to play games with strangers, if I can go play pickup at the park and not be an asshole, right? Like I've learned a lot about when do I complain? When do I call a foul? When do I not call a foul? How do I deal with the guy who's calling fouls against me too much? Like, do I punch him, or do I be like, come on, man, you're being a pussy, or, how do I deal with that? There's a lot of different ways of dealing with those types of things, right? So through games, we learn a lot of that socialization and where do we draw a line? What do we ignore? What do we not, right? So those are all types of opportunities that you have more of when you're outside of the school system, because in the school system, there's always an adult to appeal to, which is my biggest problem when I'm coaching a soccer team and all my kids go to complain to the referee. And I'm like, shut up, like figure it out yourself. If that kid is hard to hurt one of our teammates, go and deal with it yourself. Right? Like, don't go complain to the referee over and over again, like a little bitch, right? So when you're in school, stop looking to the teacher. They all look to the teacher to solve their problems.
Yeah, you're encouraged to be a tattletale. That's what they like more than anything.
Don't follow LeBron James.
So, Nick, do you want your kids to be tattletales, or do you want them to be ambitious?
Ambitious. Okay.
Or retards, as Matt would say.
So I actually did an episode on the point of like Khan Academy and stuff like that before we did the changeover in the show. I did an episode called Centralized Public Education is Dead. And it really highlighted all of those different options that are out there that can provide education that you don't have to go to a school for, right? So Khan Academy, OutSchool, my kids do math through something called Monster Academy. There's a bunch of like gamification that's done with math learning now. So all of that stuff is available to most kids. On the point of reading, I can't say this enough. It's completely correct. Reading is the most important thing for your kids to learn. They don't have to learn it by a certain age. But what we found with our kids was our two eldest, my wife taught them phonetic reading. So it's not the kind of rote memorization that most people go through when they learn reading. Like the English language sucks. It's just nonsensical, like the grammatical and spelling conventions and like, what's plural and what isn't is just ridiculous, right?
How dare you, Matt? That's America.
But dude, English slang is just the best on earth.
Yes,
man. They all say that. There's a lot of positives to English.
I would.
It's
totally
also
agree.
short. It's also short. The English alphabet versus the Spanish alphabet. Spanish alphabet's like twice as long.
Oh, I took 2 weeks of Japanese in college and dropped out because they have like 3 fucking alphabets, and I was like, nope, that's too many. I was like, nope, I'm not gonna do it. But yeah, phonetic reading, they learn.
It's like tabs for the guitar, quickly. Right?
What was that?
Tabs for the guitar. That's
just play chords or whatever. So you learn to read phonetically, and then the grammar and punctuation and capitalization comes as you begin to read more, and you get to see more of it actually in practice. And it got them reading pretty quickly. So like my 4-year-old is about at that point where we're starting to teach her. But and to your point earlier, Chris and Nick, about kind of like the nationalization and the populism that invades into the school system. There's actually I don't know if you listen or watch The Distributist. This was something that was actually, I was turned on to by a episode. I forget if it was when Matt Erickson was on Pete Quinones's Free Man Beyond the Wall. Obviously, they talked about a bunch of other stuff that has caused some controversy in the liberty community. But one of the things that he mentioned was the show The Distributist. And this is kind of like a, Mencius mold bug type show. And he recently put out an episode called How It Finally Ends. And it actually talks about Republicans and constitutional conservatives like holding these kind of symbols of nationalism so close, and basically saying that they need to part ways with them because they've been co-opted and corrupted. So what they think they're actually pledging allegiance to or they're holding dear to them is actually something that has, long ago been undermined, and it's not the, pure thing that they think it is anymore. So actually really great episode of that podcast. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, excellent. And I'm really interested to hear your upcoming podcast with the Texas Co-op people. When did you say that was coming up?
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I gotta schedule a date with them. So we're probably looking the next 2 or 3 weeks. Monday night we are talking with a bunch of crypto people. So we're going to be doing like Crypto 101.
Tune into
and
that.
then on the 23rd, which is 3 weeks away, we're actually going to be doing an episode on voluntary charitability, right? So there's actually I don't know if you follow the Anarchast, but Anarchast is one of the largest anarchist shows that's out there on YouTube. He put together something called Voluntary Virtue, which is this foundation, which kind of sparked my idea for this episode. I want to bring in people who are in the libertarian and the anarchist movement to talk about what they do as far as charity is concerned. Because again, one of the tropes of the right and the left is that, libertarians and anarchists are just, they want you all to die and them to be successful, or they're all
guilty
corporations, right? This goes a long way towards the message of the show, to basically show that no, actually, purely libertarian or anarchist community requires a sense of community, and you have to give back. You're not going to be forced to give back, but for it to be successful, people need to, build that community, and part of that is giving back and taking care of people when you have the ability to do so. So, yeah, no, really excited for that one.
Oh, excellent. What was the name of the Texas Co-op again? I want to look him up.
Yeah.
He never mentioned the actual name of the co-op, but if you go to my profile, or Chris can actually share, because he commented on the thread.
Excuse me. What are you giving me an order? What is this?
Yes.
No.
Wait a minute. It's my show this time.
Voluntary. But I can share with you the thread. But I copy pasted that to half a dozen people who were I'm in Texas, but I can't do it.
This is great timing.
Yeah,
this is great timing because I have a 3-year-old too. So
Yeah.
it's amazing. This is happening.
Yeah, I'll
The
definitely share his
simulation is
details and you
serving
can DM
a real gift to us here.
Now, I got a question. When it comes to getting kids interested in reading, do you guys implement audiobooks at all? Because I exclusively do audiobooks. I don't know how to read.
One thing that's one of the best resources I have is there's actually a colleague of mine has a podcast. It's called Books for Boys. Story. Is that the name of it? Stories for Boys. It's Tom Longano's podcast. And he writes books. They're called the boy stories. So he has the blue book of stories, the red book of stories, things like that. But my girls and my son, they all listen to the books because he does a podcast, and it's wonderful because he'll do the characters of all the different boys and whatever in the stories. But then the stories are also based off those same characters, and they want to go read the books because they're like, oh, cool, I want to know about what Jeff does and whatever, right? But that's also tied to a podcast where he tells his own story that are independent of those stories, but has the same type of characters and whatnot, and same type of hijinks that they get into. So I think the most important thing especially reading with a literature perspective, which I think is what Chris was trying to say earlier, was why would I read a book? This is not interesting. This is boring, and the vocab's too hard, or the syntax is too hard, or whatever else, right? Is to get them to love stories, right? If they love stories, then they're going to want to read more, and they're going to want to engage with them, right? We want to watch Netflix, whatever, because we're that's a cool story, man. I want to watch that. We don't just mindlessly watch TV shows. We watch the ones that we like, that are really engaging. And there's something really human, right, about telling stories. So trying to get them to engage with storytelling, get them to tell their own stories, right? Get them to write their own, my son has a little recorder, and he'll record stories that he tells into the thing. And then my other kids will pass it around to hear the story that he recorded, right?
Sounds like the intro to a murder mystery movie. He's the psycho kid who's about to kill a bunch of people.
No, that's what I'm aiming for, actually. That's why you homeschool your kids.
It sounds like the answer to is the mix. You can use audiobooks to get them interested in stories, to incentivize them to read.
That's awesome.
Right. I think that's exactly right. And so if you can incentivize them to love the end goal, right? Reading itself is not interesting. I hate reading also. I want to get the information. I want to enjoy the good story, right? I want to I want to either read a nonfiction book and get some really good information out of it, or I want to read a really cool story, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not giving me one of these two things, like I don't want to just read for reading's sake. What is that, right? So like getting them to love either the information, right, a love for truth, a love for learning, a love for knowledge, or a love for a really good story, right? To be entertained. Like, man, I had a long day. I'm just gonna, like, my mom used to always read like Mary Higgins Clark, whatever. That's not, it's like high literature, but it was entertaining to her, right? It's like watching TV. So like getting them to love stories and like just, yeah, I'm going to relax for a bit and read a novel, right? There's tons of people that do that. I personally don't, because I think to Chris's point, I got kind of like overwhelmed with that as a kid. But I've slowly gotten better at reading novels and they become more enjoyable. But like getting them to love one of those two things, and then reading becomes an avenue for that, right? So like I want to learn to read so that I can enjoy these things, so I can enter into these dialogue with these cool characters, so that I can learn about more math or learn about the trees. Like, I mean, all the time I'm telling the kids, like, yeah, go find an oak tree in your neighborhood, or go find an elm tree, or, you know, something like that. How are you going to find out what that is? Well, you look at the tree book and you have to be able to read through it. And there's pictures in there and there's words, whatever. Like, don't be afraid of any particular medium, right? The medium is there for our purpose, to get information, to share things, to express ourselves. So all of those things are wonderful. The more of those things you can do, the better, because they all help each other out, right? Like visual, audio, tactile writing, all those types of things all should be working together as to get to the truth at the end of the day, to get to more knowledge, to get to more human flourishing. So all of the above strategy is the best.
And you both
Awesome.
have younger kids, but for anyone who does listen that has kids that are in that kind of like, 8 to 15, 16 age range, this is a fantastic time to read dystopian novels or listen to them. So my son's 10. He likes Maze Runner. He likes Hunger Games. My daughter's reading the Red Queen series, I think is what it's called. My daughter is like, just to show you, like my daughter's like 18 months older than my son. And she's like probably 4 years ahead of him in maturity. Actually, probably 20 years ahead in maturity. But
that's normal, though.
So she actually started her own book club with some of her normie friends that go to public school. And so at night, they have a book club and they read these dystopian novels and talk about them. And just talk about how, like, kind of the liberty movement can spread. Like, it's kids. Like, kids will share information. All you have to do is give it to them. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a Trojan horse, but if my daughter is patient zero for spreading, detesting the government to all of her normie friends, then I will be more than happy to take that bullet for.
Go ahead and call it a Trojan horse. Why? That's cool. Just call it a Trojan horse. Who cares?
Well, I mean, I'll call 3D printing that all day long, because 3D printing is one of those decentralized technologies that crosses ideological barriers, right? So kids are out there 3D printing like D&D pieces and stuff like that.
Hey, Nick, can you bring the camera closer to your 3D printer station?
I haven't
Let's show the
finished
viewers.
yet, but I opened the box. Progress has been made. I got the box.
We're making progress. The Gulag 3D printer. We got approved by the state. They sent us one.
Nick got the one that is like one of the hardest to assemble.
Well, I opened it, and the first thing I found out was the pre-drilled threads weren't drilled deep enough for the 16mm screws I got. So I had to like order some new, like, shorter screws on Amazon the other night. So I got like paused in my construction.
That's how you know how good it is. It's that hard to build.
Well, everything about the parts list is like assembled. Like, it's not one manufacturer. So it's like, it all comes together and hopefully it all fits. But when it comes together, it's amazing.
That's how they're saving all that money, is just have you do all the assembly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, so
One box of
to
tools.
Matt's point about the kids, I think that's big. I just realized that there's two things that come to mind. One is that my daughter like keeps up correspondence by letters with a bunch of people. Like, she'll write a letter to my grandpa or my father. She'll write a letter to her friends that she knows from a sleepaway camp and whatever else. Like, just maintaining correspondence with people by written word is like, that's cool. Like, no one does that. Secondly, my son is always correcting my wife when it comes to legal issues. So like, my wife the other day was like,
that's not good. Man,
this is like sucks about this mask mandate that they're reimposing in Montgomery County. And man, I really don't want to do that. And my son's like, you don't have to like follow that. Right. Because my wife is very much a rule follower and all that. And that's great. But like, my son's always like, you don't, why would you do that? Like, it's like, out of the mouths of babes, there's like this idea that kids are just going to say the thing that makes sense to them. Right. So like, being able to see the world fresh from a kid's perspective, like, what do you mean? Like, they're not going to, what are they going to do? Like, you go to the
I don't know.
supermarket.
There's some stupid kids out there, dude. I don't know.
There are.
Just because it came from a kid doesn't mean it's, the Dalai Lama.
No, that's wrong, Chris. Everything your kid says you have to do.
My kid just said, I love the grocery store guy who took my cart the other day.
Nice.
I didn't even know.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's true love. You can't question that.
But I mean, this happens a lot with him and his friends and other types of things. Like they'll say more radical things than most adults will, because they're just like, well, that's what it makes sense to do. I guess
I can't argue with that. Yeah.
Right. They live a more, and again, that's going back to the Huckleberry Finn thing, right? Like, kids have a certain amount of freedom. And like my dad always said, like, yeah, kids can just run across other people's lawns and like, whatever, like, what are you going to do? Right. Like, no, I'm going to call the cops on you, 12-year-old who just like ran across my yard. Like,
well, they get another chance when they get old. See, so we'll get another chance. Don't worry.
Yeah, true.
When you're old, all the traits you had from being a young child just happen again. It's really the same thing.
But it's like, are you going to be the guy that gets upset at them and yells at them? It's like, no, come on. Like,
except you can have a gun.
Yeah, and then you can start shooting them. That's the best. That's why
we all saw The Sopranos.
This is a libertarian podcast.
Yeah, that's why I want Texas. I can't stand. You can't shoot any kids in your property in Maryland.
No, believe me, I have tried. Yeah. Well, do you guys want to keep talking homeschooling, or do y'all want to go to the current events? I don't know how long do you guys want to be on the show?
I'm good for a little bit.
Good.
Y'all 30 minutes left.
Y'all want to change gears? You guys have any other? Nick, have your fears been alleviated?
So Matt shared the link to Billy Pierce, who is in Harris County, which is my county. So it's like, holy crap! It's like the stars are aligning right now.
So
I probably have to leave around 3:45-ish. So.
Okay, yeah, it won't go that long. I was thinking maybe 3 if you guys can stay around long enough.
Yeah, it's 3. Are we on different time zones? Because
you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not used to doing that. Just whenever you're on this show, you got to pretend like you're living in Texas.
Yeah. So I
don't want to have to think more for you guys.
2:45 at your time.
Yeah. So, this is any other final thoughts from anybody? Nick, have your fears been alleviated?
No, I've got a lot to look into. I want to look into see if there's any boys' schools near me. I definitely want to check out Billy Pierce, see how these co-ops work. But
what city you guys in?
I'm in Houston. Chris is.
I'm in Round Rock. Soon I'll be in Waxahachie, just south of Dallas.
Round Rock is a suburb of Austin.
Gotcha.
Yeah, make it easier for y'all.
Yeah, so we're gonna. I know there is Western Academy, which I think is that near Houston?
I've
never heard of it.
I don't know.
Texas is pretty big.
No, yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely share that, and I'm gonna be wanting to know more about that too. That you're talking to some guy who talks about co-ops in Texas. That's actually it's pretty amazing that that's something you're about to be doing. So we're gonna be keeping a close eye on that. And you guys are okay. So I think I've decided that Matt, you're gonna be the Gulag State ordered therapist, and David, you're gonna be the life coach.
Got it. I'm happy I made it.
All right. Congratulations. All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at what some of the craziness going on around the world is. This is kind of our shtick. Okay. This time I'm going to make sure I do the audio first this time.
It just bullshit about current events. Anything you guys seen interesting this week?
New York City's right in our backyard, being in New Jersey, and the vaccine discrimination, I guess I would call it, that's happening right now.
Now I got to ask you: is it really easy to just lie to these people? Is there any way for them to check if you're unvaccinated?
Well, so I find it ironic that on Twitter the FBI shared the card that you're not supposed to download.
I have it saved in an undisclosed location just in case.
Are you joking? That's real?
No. They shared out a copy of it.
Really?
Here's the PDF. Do not fill this out.
No, you're joking, right? I mean, I know the government's incompetent, but that's...
When it first started, Sal the Agorist actually shared out a downloadable PDF that you could then like laminate, and it looks like official. Like it was spot on. I mean, the CDC website actually put it out right at the beginning too. Like this is what the card looks like.
That's a wonderful.
This sucks, man. So I'm glad you guys are having a good time while I'm learning how to use StreamYard over here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to just share I really need to get another monitor.
But at this point, does the vaccine even matter? Because now they're saying that if you have the vaccine,
we're going to get there. Stop. No, we're going to get there.
Zip it.
Okay. So you guys need to tell me, we ought to do this dance again. What I really want to do is share this, and then I'll ask you guys if y'all can hear it. Can you hear this? Here, I'll just play the Mr. Deeds clip again. Can y'all hear that?
No.
Can y'all hear this?
No.
No. Okay, well, that's the one thing I want to do. So I'm going to have to do this. Share entire screen is the only thing that works. So the video is going to look stupid until I figure out how this works. Maybe Matt, you can also be a consultant. Hey, that looks pretty good, but then you can see my screen over here. That's stupid. All right, so here's where we're going to start. Have you guys seen this Newsweek cover?
The Doomsday variant? Yeah.
Okay, so that doesn't work. We're just learning how to use this. Yeah, so pretty interesting, huh? I wonder what they're going to do for the next strain. You know, so they've got Delta and they're calling it the Doomsday variant. Maybe that's what this is saying, is like eventually the variant's going to get so bad that it's going to kill everybody. Is that kind of what this is?
I'm worried about the Ligma variant.
Which was another post from the CDC telling people that it's a spoof to talk about the Ligma variant.
Oh, really? They had to correct for that?
Was that what that's from?
Timeline right now.
Oh, I made that joke weeks ago. I was like, "Oh, the Ligma variant." My wife at this point is like, "Nick, shut up." All right, but the Candace variant.
Oh, guys, I think I figured it out. So here, how does this look? Can y'all see this? Oh, dude, this works. I'm gonna share it, dude. Matt, I got this from you.
Oh yeah,
dude. I'm sorry, I haven't actually watched this whole thing because I couldn't, but I had to, so y'all have to now.
Get your vaccine.
Can y'all hear it?
Get your vaccine.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear this? Okay.
How we gonna beat it if we don't get your vaccine? Have to put our mask back on. Put that needle in your arm.
I had to take my headphones off. I couldn't do it. I got about halfway.
it's a cult.
Oh, shut up, side.
Oh no! Don't
do it again.
You know, it's really bad, but the fact that we're looking at this on Twitter, it's a TikTok. That means that like kids all over the world are seeing this and sharing it. I'm hoping ridiculing it, but there's probably a certain percentage of it that's like, oh yeah, this is funny. It's sad.
It's really caused me to question my own like psychology. Like I did that on Matt's Twitter. Like I was genuinely asking the question. Like it's like I'm really trying to watch it, but it's physically like why can't I can't look at her? Like so the first thing I do is just look away from the screen. Like I can't handle it. But then if I'm hearing it, like why? Like why can't I mean, cringe is the easiest thing to say, but it's like I don't understand why I can't.
I believe my response to you, Chris, was it's the sound that makes me want to punch babies.
I don't get it. It's like it makes you think like there's a ring in hell where you have to listen to that on loop.
Oh yeah.
Like,
most definitely. Which this is like again, you know, you talk to normies and they just brush this off, but you know, part of the stimulus packages was like tens of millions of dollars to go to influencers to magnify things like this. And that just waxes of communist propaganda state.
That makes so much sense. That's why these are all popping up all over the place. It's not just people like believing it themselves. You don't think she's a true believer?
Whether she might be, like they might have like handpicked her or whatever, but they're using that money to take known celebrities to put this stuff out. I mean, everyone's seen like some of these rappers that used to be like fuck the man, and now they're like talking about getting your vaccine and doing, you know, revamps of their songs.
Traitors, artistic traitors.
Rage Against the Machine is now Rage for the Machine.
you gotta believe that on these platforms, that when these things start to you know, organically gain some traction, that they're pushing the algorithm to send this crap out there. And it is the most cringe, again, it is an indictment of the fact that people will watch this unironically. Like that's the thing. If you watch and laugh, good, you and I can have a conversation. If you watch this unironically and you're like, see, she says get the vaccine, we should all get the vaccine.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, if I was a pro-vaccine person, could I watch the same video and be like, yeah, she's just doing her part. You know, just she's trying to reach the kids in like a hip way to do some public service announcement type thing. I need to show this to my sister. I'll record it and show y'all. We can do like a study about it.
You know how TikTok works, right? If you actually watch a video all the way through or let it loop, the algorithm acknowledges the amount of time you spend on a video and tailors more videos for that to pop up like you. That's how TikTok.
Oh, I thought they already did that. I thought, doesn't YouTube do that too?
Yeah.
Yes. But TikTok is much quicker because all the videos are less than 15 seconds. So stuff like that is instantly going to polarize people, because if you're like you or I, the first thing you do is next video. And then the algorithm's like, okay, don't show him that. But if you watch it all the way through, you're going to start getting more of that.
It's what Alex Jones was telling us about with the, okay, dude, you guys want to see some really awesome like Alex Jones porn here? I got it queued up and ready to go. I was saving this. This is the perfect time to break this out.
Now, Matt, you said that was actually part of the stimulus bill, or did that get pulled? They're actually paying influencers?
Yeah, no, they passed tens of millions within the stimulus bill in order to pay influencers to, get the message out about vaccines. Yeah,
that's concerning, especially like like I said, TikTok. It's how prolific it is, especially in the youth. Even my wife is obsessed with it. All my sisters, it is the best way to spread
TikTok
messages.
They use TikTok. Oh man, yeah. I thought high school girls were the only ones that use that.
I mean, all girls are high school girls at their core.
I love the fact that we used to get TikToks of nurses doing flash mob dances, and now you don't see that anymore, do we?
No.
Y'all want to hear an Alex Jones losing it video?
Let's go.
Was this recent?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you really think there's people out there campaigning for late-term abortions? You think that shit's real? You think that shit's real?
Monday to keep it legal.
Who would do that? Who would do that? Who would campaign for? That's the most.
Fucking did it,
that
Bravo,
is the craziest shit
you
ever.
You can't fucking admit they're fucking killing already born kids. So you're telling me it isn't real when they had a fucking vote in the goddamn fucking Senate?
That's a conspiracy theory.
I am ready to beat your
That's a conspiracy theory.
You think you're fucking tough? You're
Alex Jones is the best, man.
That was great. That was the last time he was on, and right after that, Bravo was like, "Yeah, I'm just fucking with you, bro." Like,
so that didn't just happen, right? That's an old episode.
No, yeah, that was the last time he was on, like back.
Okay,
I want to say like February maybe or somewhere around there, but
yeah. Well, I wanted to play it anyway.
No, it's good. It's good times for sure.
What's the context of that? Is it like actually a program to harvest organs, or is this just Alex?
It was when the late term abortion stuff was going on, where the governor from Michigan or whatever, the debate was if they just like said it was okay for some context. Like, I don't know, it was some local thing. But
Alex Jones' big thing is like they're harvesting kid organs, babies' organs, so that they can do organ transplants. And like this happens with like living people, like post-born people or whatever in China, where they'll take. Sorry, buddy, like we need your kidney because somebody who's close to the party needs one. So obviously, what do you want us to do? Like we have to get your kidney. So
would a newborn kidney even be any good for an adult?
Yeah. So the idea is that they can harvest them. They can. This is Alex Jones speaking here, but that they can take the organ out. And I mean, I imagine with modern science, they can like grow it in a lab until it gets to be bigger. And then they can put it into
implant it into like a pig, let it grow on a pig's ass for 6 months or whatever.
Something like that. I don't know all the science. I just teach science. So
I find a lot of issues with that approach. It's very relevant to me. My uncle just did a 4-way kidney transplant, like 4 people involved, all swapping kidneys.
Oh wow.
And getting a kidney from another person is not all hunky-dory because you're pretty much on rejection pills for the rest of your life. So even if you get a kidney from a little kid, one, you got to wait for it to become fully developed, which will take a while. And 2, you still have to be on anti-rejection drugs. So it's no better than getting, an adult kidney, transfer from somebody who volunteered to be a part of a 4 or 5-way swap, which is usually how it plays out in the States. If you don't have someone who's compatible with you that wants to give you a kidney, he can give it to someone else. They can give it to someone else. And eventually somebody who's compatible with you will give it to you a part of like a big exchange. That's what happened with my uncle. It was a 4-way swap. So like the idea that there's a organ harvesting program doesn't make sense to me because the organ program we have now isn't very great. Like, yeah, you'll live, but you're going to be on a lot of immunosuppressants. It's not a great lifestyle. It's better than dialysis, but you really don't want to be there.
So I actually went to school for biomedical engineering. And so back in the early 2000s, they were working on both mechanical replacements and then also tissue grown replacements. So there was an experiment that was actually even older than that. It was done in like the late 80s, where they took a pig heart. They essentially stripped all of the immune markers off the outside of the pig heart and then transplanted it into a human being. And it actually took for like, I think a couple of months where it still functioned. There wasn't any immune response. So they've been working on this type of technology for a long time. Children's constitutions in general typically end up, their systems themselves have a much more, it's a more generalist immune system, right? Which is why COVID hasn't really been affecting them that much. It's because their immune system just sees an invader and just blows it out of the water, right?
Right.
Us as adults, as we get older, we get a more like finely honed immune system that only identifies specific things. It's part of the reasons why, say, like the Delta variant is an issue, because now you have a variant where everyone took a vaccine that wasn't specifically geared towards that variant. And so it's kind of screwed a lot more people than actually helped them. But so anyway, the organ aspect of things, this technology has been around for a long time. It wouldn't surprise me if somewhere they're using donated or harvested material and then essentially stripping the immune markers from the outside of it. But I can remember back when I was in school, there was a big ethical debate about buying like medical tourism and buying kidneys from like India and other countries.
Indonesia, go pick up your kidney.
I mean, I gotta be honest, as long as they're not harvested from coercion, right? If it's actually the individual getting the direct proceeds of the sale and stuff like that, that's fine. The problem that they had was because it was a black market, you had a bunch of brokers that were out there that were essentially harvesting organs through coercion and awful means like the mafia. And ironically enough, it was rich Americans and people from other countries that were benefactors of that process. But yeah.
Right.
So as the Gulag state ordered biomedical engineering?
Biomedical engineer, yes.
Okay, what's your take on the animal human hybrids theory in China, the man-bear pigs that they're making over there?
Chimeras? Yeah, no. Look, I'm super serial, guys. We got to. Look, they've been trying to do that for a while. Like, I don't know I don't know where they're at with it. I haven't really read up a lot with it, but I mean, there's already a precedent for it, right? I mean, a lot of the GMO crops essentially have cross-species genes that are inserted into them, right? So, I mean, why you would want to do that, I'm not exactly certain, unless there's a targeted end to it. But
super soldiers, of course.
I mean, could be. What was the movie? There was like a horror film that was like based out of World War II, and it was like basically these super soldiers that were essentially kind of like almost like zombies or like these like ravenous animals that were doctored up. I forget what the heck was the name.
Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Wait, what was it? The red line, thin red line, or whatever.
I don't fucking know.
No, but yeah, I mean, there's a precedent. I mean, shit, with the stuff that you've seen over the last 18 months, I wouldn't question anything at this point, right? Like UFOs, UFOs are a thing. Like everything that was supposedly a conspiracy theory is now like at least has some nugget of truth behind it,
Well, on the same vein of the removing the markers on the heart and using it as a transplant, there was one thing I saw in college, and it looked promising. Is they take like a cadaver heart or a pig heart, really, because it's very similar in structure, and they'd put it through some kind of like cell detergent and leave just like the jelly structure. They'd throw your stem cells on it, wait for your cells to repopulate around the structure, and then they could put that in you with minimal rejection issues.
Yep.
And over time, there'd be none because your body would replace the structure, and it'd be completely your heart, just completely remade. And that looked interesting. That like stuff like that, or like 3D printed organs, which I don't know what the status of that is. That seems like the future of transplants.
Yeah.
Bones. They're doing bones and artificial limbs, and they're getting really good at it.
Bone is really easy. So bone's a lot easier than like a more specialized organ because there's less moving parts, so to speak. It's a very bad phrase, but bone's really easy because you essentially have two parts of it, right? It's the hard bone and then it's the spongy bone. So if you can get both of those right from a biomechanical standpoint, then especially if you have a universally transplantable tissue that isn't going to be rejected, it's pretty easy. But from what I've seen, the 3D printing, most of it is relegated to like, samples that are this big, right?
Yeah.
And then they put it into someone. They haven't really been able to do anything like large scale just yet, but it's a matter of time. I mean, the thing you run into when you're dealing in kind of like the biomedical space is everyone thinks that this gigantic leap is going to happen overnight. And it really isn't. Like, there's a technology, you know, I mean, like, for example, the technology they're using right now for the COVID vaccine was developed back in the early 80s, right? So you're talking a 40-year time span before they even got to the point where they had a use case for it, right? You know,
you're talking about mRNA, just
yes.
Yeah. And yeah, we're all the big experiment for that getting implemented. So it took a pandemic in order to actually utilize that. So who knows when it would have come about if it was the status quo.
Yeah.
All right, guys, y'all want to do one more?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do one more. I
quick hitter
that David needs to get going on here. So let's do it. It's a completely different topic. All right, here we go.
Oh, Winky.
See what y'all think about this.
Winky.
No audio.
Sound.
No audio.
Shit. That happens to me too much, man. All right, let's try this again.
Forgive us, we're new.
I don't know why. I mean, for the show's entire existence, this has been something that I haven't been able to do well.
I hope this is
after
red
this, I
flag
need
laws
to.
so David can go off.
Oh,
Here we go.
Crenshaw. I lost my love relationship with Crenshaw. We came out in favor of red flag laws, and it's been downhill since then.
This is going to be the last nail in the coffin.
I think Americans are pretty sick of nation building, but the general public can't really distinguish between 200,000 troops and nation building, which does seem like a waste of money to a lot of people and a lot of waste of resources. But they can't distinguish between that and keeping a security presence that prevents another 9/11. People ask all the time, well, what do we get in the last 20 years of war? No more 9/11s. That's what we got. That's a pretty good deal. And, you know, guys like me are not victims. We're hungry to get out there and kill some bad guys. And it's just what we do. And I wish they weren't there. I wish they didn't wake up every morning and try to plan attacks on the homeland. But that is what they'll do when they have the operational space and the timing and just the comfort level to do so.
All right, blah, blah, blah. Y'all get it. So
They're planning attacks on the Reichstag. We must stop them.
I actually, dude, listen, I really wanted to like Dan Crenshaw because of his eye patch and how cool that was. But I'm sorry, he's one of the worst when it comes to this topic. Like
he was like grown in a lab for conservatives to love. He just
all they need to do now is give him like they need to have his hand get cut off in war and replace it with like an American flag or something.
Yeah, a machine gun. Come on.
So we said we
like
actually
one of Sid's toys in Toy Story.
Yeah. We brought up on the last episode what people would say if you asked them why not leave Afghanistan. Like, what's the problem with that? What they're going to say is something along the lines of, if you don't, if we leave Afghanistan, then Al-Qaeda is going to turn it into an Al-Qaeda slip and slide, and they'll be able to plan all these attacks from over there, and that's why we need to be there. And I don't know. What you guys pretty well versed with this kind of stuff, and y'all know why that's just completely ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I'll let you take a stab at it, David.
Yeah, no.
Who wants to go first?
I think I'm with you on that. There's I mean, last I checked, that plans weren't being planned from Afghanistan to begin with, but
yeah,
what do I know?
Yeah, we want to plan attacks in Syria. There's no, it's not big enough. Not bigger. We got to move Afghanistan much bigger. Like they're all over the place. Middle East is huge. It's Afghanistan's close, so we can't be terrorists anymore.
Plus, he went to didn't we find him in Pakistan? Like, we didn't find him in Afghanistan.
There's a lot of reasons.
Right
why
next to the
crazy.
Government building there, so he can't do his plans there.
Well, no. Plus, we're funding Al Qaeda in a bunch of other places, and that's not a conspiracy. Like, we know that now that they funded them. So if they're really that scared of Al Qaeda planning, they wouldn't be giving them like weapons and intel and money and like trying to help them in certain areas. Like, I'm pretty sure they can. Like, these people are perfectly capable of taking the weapons we gave them and just turning it right back at us whenever they feel like it.
This is a self-serving circle jerk on the part of neocons and the globalists that are on the Democratic side, right? Like, every single one of them will make the argument why we can't leave, right? Like, it'll fall apart, like things won't go well. Well, congratulations, that's the blood's on your hands, right? Like you made that happen. That's a reality because of you, not because of anything
They're trying
else,
to save face. They're trying to save face. That's what they've been doing.
And quite frankly, I think they understand that they've created a hornet's nest, and they're worried that if it falls apart, all of a sudden people will be able to see that they mucked it all up, right? Like, I mean, just look at Yemen. Like and I'm sorry to kind of like shift away from Afghanistan, but Yemen is the poster child for American foreign policy fuck-ups. You have a guy who's supposedly, favorable to the U.S., that we support. The people throw him out because he's basically killing a bunch of innocent people. Then what he does is goes to the people he was killing, and he aligns with them, which we don't like. Comes back, retakes it, right? Then we don't like that. So, and then we basically put a freaking embargo on the country so that now 500,000 to 1 million people are dead from starvation. It's like the listening to any of these people talk about foreign policy, they will stand up there and like wax all knowledgeable about like, well, this people do this and these people do this, these people do this. Dude, these people don't know shit. They don't know, like, they might know like the names for places and things, right? Like, what is Aleppo, right? Like, they might know the names of places and shit,
Not
right?
Dan Crenshaw. Dude, Dan Crenshaw knows all that shit. He's not an idiot.
He knows the players, but the problem is what he doesn't understand is the fallout from, okay, we support these people this week and these people this week and these people this week. And eventually all you end up with is a bunch of enemies. Right. Like,
well, he thinks it's worth it. That's his thing. He thinks that all that trouble is just the price we have to pay for a safe America. I'm sure that's what he would say. It's the price we have to pay for safe America.
Wait, what was the Madeleine Albright quote? Like,
it was worth it.
Kids? It was worth it. Right?
The 500,000 dead kids in Iraq.
Yeah, fuck them. They were in the wrong place. They have the wrong color skin. They live in sand.
Imagine she said that.
You have to read between the lines, right?
Yeah.
I got to tell you. The thing that red pilled, sorry to cut you off, David, but the thing that red pilled me was during Bush W being involved in the Gulf War II, right? Iraq War II. He was at a press conference and a correspondent asked him, well, we have records that 5,000 innocent Iraqis were killed within the last, 4 months or whatever. What do you have to say about that? And he just fucking laughed it off. He was like, I don't know.
Who did?
George W.
Oh, W. Bush. Okay.
Yeah, like, and just laughed it off in a press conference in front of the American people. And at that moment in time, I was like, you know what? You had me for a second. Like, whatever,
I was all for it.
Incubators, weapons of mass destruction. I'm worried or whatever.
Yeah.
The moment he said that, I was like, this is complete bullshit.
So you're telling me George Bush has as much respect for innocent Iraqi children as he does for the Constitution?
Yes.
Yeah, man. When I was in 10th grade, I bought into all that shit, dude. I was a bleeding heart. Republicans are the right team. All the boxes when I was, in 5th grade through like probably Ron Paul in 2008. Yeah.
If I was old enough and 9/11 happened, like chances of me joining the military were probably high.
Yeah, if I was 18.
I was in 5th grade. So
Iraq has to be. I'm going to disagree a little bit, Matt. I think Iraq, I mean, as bad as Yemen was, I think Iraq was, if I look at every single decision that the president's made regarding like going to war against another country, Iraq was probably the stupidest one out of all of them.
I could see that. Yeah.
And the funny thing was when it happened, I was all for it. Like, it's so weird looking back and seeing, now I feel like I have to kind of make up for it now.
So the direct retort to Crenshaw on that point is, what's more likely, that us staying there is going to stop it? Us staying there is what's going to stop it, or us staying there is what's going to create more likely situation that there's another one.
What he's going to say is that we have to get better conditions on the ground and we have to have a government that's capable of, secure. That's what he's going to say. Okay.
Yeah, we need to have more state. The thing I was going to say earlier, though, is that the history disproves your entire position, right? Because they're like, if we're not there, we're going to have another September 11th. Well, like, we were everywhere before September 11th. So what type of nonsense is this? right? Like
I know the balls of that guy. Well, we haven't had any 9/11s since then, so it must be working.
Oh yeah. So everything. We were isolationists before 9/11. Get the hell out of here. We bombed.
That'd be like me saying, "Well, I converted to Christianity after that happened, and it hasn't happened again. So it must be because I'm a Christian."
That's a very good point. That's a completely arbitrary metric, right? Like,
one data point.
Since then, I haven't eaten a churro.
How many
9/11s?
9/11? How many 9/11s were we having like a week before this happened?
Right. After JFK got shot, we didn't have any 9/11s for 35 years. So we just need to assassinate presidents. Like, what type of logic? This is complete nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Like, none of this makes any sense.
Got an applause
logic, but think of it this way: whenever the masks become like a permanent feature of society, they're going to end up saying, "Oh, we haven't had a big pandemic ever again because we started wearing masks," and it's complete bullshit because viruses go straight through masks.
Which, to bring it back to the Delta variant, this is more like this has nothing to do with the actual the actual threat that's associated with the Delta variant. What it more so has to do with is the psychological control, because they need to get to a certain amount of the population being vaccinated so that history will show that the vaccine was what stopped the pandemic.
That's right.
When truthfully it was once we got to a certain level of vaccination, the government stopped the pandemic, but it won't read that way in the history book.
Nope.
No. At least, well, maybe in the K through 12 history book it will, but not the Gulag homeschool curriculum.
We know
exactly. Yeah. We're going to eat some borscht and we're going to learn about the true history of the COVID pandemic.
Now, I think what Crenshaw really wants to say is we need to stay in Iraq because we need to have more bases ready to attack Iran.
Afghanistan.
They're already looking
all the same.
Yeah, they're looking for the next conflict. You can see it. They're probing, right? Like they
never stopped after World War II. Somebody put it, after World War II, all the countries stopped fighting except the U.S.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my good friend who's in infantry, and he was saying basically like the commanders don't want to leave Afghanistan, not because they like care about it geopolitically or whatever. It's just like it's a great spot to deploy troops, and then they get to train. And that's great training, right? And you can't argue with that, right? Like, of course it is, right? Like, you're going to train better in Afghanistan. You're going to train in some U.S. base. And so being able to have that area where we can deploy troops, where they can say they went overseas and deployed and they were away from their family for a year or whatever, and they had that type of training experience is helpful towards having a more elite military. Sure, got it, right? Like, you can see the point, but is it worth it, right? And that's like, the military, that's not the military's job, right? The military's job, if you ask the commanders, right, is to have the highest level fighting force. That's their job. It's a job of the politicians to say, okay, that's not the number one most important thing. Just like it's a job of maybe some virologists or whatever to say, like, here would be the best policy if we number one most important goal was to not have spread of COVID or something. But it's up to the politicians, supposedly, right, to say like, okay, cool, that's what you're saying. Here's another data point. Here's another data point. And now we need to balance those so that we can come up with good public policy that is going to be best for everybody, not to just make one thing the most important value that there is. And that's what the left is always doing to us, right? Whenever it's up to them, they just take their value out of the hat and they say, this is the most important thing. Believe all women. That's the most important thing right now. And then you're like, okay, what's the next thing? Oh, now it's stopping COVID. Now it's making sure we don't pull troops out of Afghanistan. Now it's the Iraqi children. Now it's whatever, right? Whatever the thing is of that day, they make that into the number one value. And we just all have to bow to it. Otherwise, we are the exact opposite, right? Otherwise, you hate the thing that they're proposing. So there's really no way out of it until you just stop engaging with them. Like that's my biggest criticism of the right for all the time I've been alive is like, just stop arguing with these people and engaging with them. They're not arguing in good faith. They're not worth talking to, and focus on our own side, which is why I was so happy to join Matt's podcast, because like that's what we're doing, right? Like we're talking to each other, we're trying to figure out, and it shouldn't be an echo chamber, right? It shouldn't just be repeating the same thing, but helping each other out, helping people of goodwill who actually want to try to move things forward and try to have more human flourishing and freedom and all those other type of things. Like, let's work on strategies ourselves so we can figure this out instead of arguing with these nonsense people that have no ability for rational thought. Like, you're not getting anywhere with those people. You might go grab a beer with them and hang out, and they might be nice people. Like, just don't talk to them about these things. There's no hope. Like, just move on with your life.
It removes a lot of stress from your life. The worst thing you do is argue with people on social media. That's basically what it boils down to.
It's really hard. It's really hard when it happens to someone you know, like one of your really good friends, like where they feel like you're arguing with them, and their mentality is almost like, me winning this argument is going to move the ball closer to the goal in politics. Like, so they really get passionate and emotional, and they get upset, and like, and the only way. But I used to be like that too, so I get it. But it's
that's why I love shit posting so much. I
Yeah.
love shit posting because it infuriates the other person, and it gives you an out where you don't care anymore, right? So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
when they come up with some kind of slogan or something like that, and you're like, "Sir, this is Wendy's," and then you just walk away from the conversation, right? Like that's the best feeling in the world, because you know they're fuming behind the other screen. They're like, "That
you need to take me seriously."
Yeah.
You know you've won when you get
race lies in this debate. You know.
You know you've won when you get like a 5-paragraph response and you don't read it.
I'm not reading that.
Like watching Michael Malice's feed, like just watching it is beautiful because he just gives you a roadmap. It's like
he wins after Donald Trump wasn't president anymore. Michael Malice, he took the throne. I think.
As soon as someone calls you a name, they lose. As soon as they tell you what kind of degree they have from college, they lose. As soon as they give you some kind of nonsensical talking point from, you know, the higher ups, they lose. Like, it's such an easy metric. And then from that point on, they're no longer arguing in good faith. You just freaking throw one last dig in and just walk away. Like, you drop the grenade and walk away. It's fantastic.
Yeah, not having the last word in an argument is probably the best thing if you can pull it off. If you make sure they talk last, and you just like, if you think it was bad enough, then you're just like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
I've only been able to do that like a few times in my life because I don't talk to anybody anymore. I don't argue with anybody on social media anymore. So I left Facebook and I don't talk. I basically had a Facebook ever since I was in high school. And then at a certain point, I just stopped saying anything.
Yeah.
You know, because I look back in my life and I'm like, every time I've said anything political on Facebook, I regretted it every single time. So I eventually just stopped doing it. And then you become depressed because you feel like a ghost. You feel like you're an invisible guy in a room watching everybody else talk.
Nothing but cat pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my Facebook's just pictures of my kids, and like occasionally my sister will be like, "Oh, I got kicked, banned from posting for 24 hours because of this post." I'm like, "Well, I mean, it's Facebook. What do you expect?"
Yeah. Okay, so do you guys need a wrap? I think.
Yeah, we got to get Dave out of his prison cell.
Yeah, out of the gulag. Yeah, out for good behavior. He's got 8 kids exiled.
Pounding on the door, looking for exiled.
You guys have been great. I hope we can do this again soon. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thanks for having us on. This is great.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for taking the time. I'll see you guys on Twitter, and definitely going to want to know a lot more about this educator you're having on, the co-op guy. I'm going to be looking for that. Definitely. All right. Have a good one. See you guys later.
Thanks, Jets.
Later.